Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming in today. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about building assistive technologies on top of the Windows 8 platform. My name is Brett Humphrey. I'm a senior test lead on the Human Interaction Platform team. And my job there kindly is really focused on accessibility, and it's in kind of three parts. Part one, I focus a lot on the UI automation layer, which is really the driving technology for accessibility on Windows. And then secondly, I also focus on the inbox functionality that's in Windows. And then third, I kind of do a consulting role inside Windows where I talk with a lot of folks around Windows about what's the impact of accessibility and also kind of look at UI to make sure things are described properly. And today I'm excited to kind of talk about this with you because in Windows 8 we're doing a lot to continue to evolve the accessibility platform, and both for accessible technology vendors and for people out of the box. And on a personal note, it's super fun for me to do this because I am a low vision user. And over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, I will continue to lose my eyesight. So it's really important for me personally to make sure all these components work really, really well. So it's really fun to be involved in this evolution of the new Metro style apps and then helping everything also be accessible. So with that, I'm going to kind of go through the agenda. I'm going to actually dive right into a demo because I want to kind of show some of the pieces that are in Windows now, both in Magnifier and in Narrator. Both of those have been updated in Windows 8. And I'm going to talk about that in kind of two parts. One, what is the user experience that we're trying to go for? And then secondly, what are the pieces that really interest people building assistive technology? So I'm going to kind of annotate some interesting points as we go along. Then the next 3 points are really around building assistive technologies. Assistive technologies have kind of three main areas when you look at what they're trying to do. One, they're trying to get information from the platform. And so we have a bunch of platform updates. Then secondly, there's areas where you have to integrate. So for your users, do you need to have UI on top of everything? Do you need to have UI but not overlapping the rest of the new Metro style spaces that you've been hearing about? And then third, really, how do you get information from these new spaces? And so we'll talk quite a bit about that as well. And then finally, a call to action. There's some things that you may have to respond to as you develop these applications on Windows 8, and so we just want to make sure you understand where those pieces fit. And overall, when you walk out, when you kind of leave, we really want you to understand that UI automation is our continued investment for accessibility. It is where we want information to flow to and from the applications. And then, most importantly, we believe there are great opportunities in your ability to integrate and extend and really bring a full usability to your clients on Windows 8. So we'll kind of go into the demo a bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is just start Magnifier. And I'm going to switch over here to the piano. So now one of the first things you may notice as an assistive technology vendor is that I'm inside a Metro application, but yet I have UI on top. And that is specifically and only designed for assistive technology. And we did that because we recognize that there are places where you're going to need to interact and use this platform to help your customers interact on a touch device. So I'm going to press the plus button up there. And what I can do now is use, with one finger, touch the edge of these and kind of slide Magnifier around. I can zoom in and continue to move Magnifier around. I can tap both of these and zoom out, which is also available on the keyboard by Control-Alt-Space. Now, the underlying technology for magnification is the same as it was in Windows 7. The update we've really done is updated the touch interface. And we've done that in a way where we believe that you can easily use it from working on the borders. You can do things you're familiar with, which pinch zoom, just dragging around. But also the reason I opened the piano app is that I wanted to demonstrate that we really don't change anything in the usability for the user. So you can hear and see that all 5 fingers went down and are able to easily interact and not really reduce the experience for those using magnification. So again, the key highlights there really are around, yes, you can have UI on top. It really is only designed for assistive technologies. And then secondly, the interaction model that we were using really is through a custom interaction model through touch. There were several talks on touch earlier in the week, so you can go look at those and determine how to do custom interactions. Extremely useful for this type of setup. Next thing I'm going to do is go into Narrator. But as an AT vendor, you may be thinking, well, I don't really want to have to go to the Start menu to necessarily launch my application. And so some of the things that we've really done are looked at this new hardware platform, and we wanted to be able to have you integrate fairly seamlessly into this experience. And what you can do is register with ease of access, and you can then be launched by the hardware components. So you can actually press the Windows key and volume up. Excuse me, and I have it set up to launch Narrator right now, so I'll go ahead and do that.
Narrator window, focus on Welcome to Narrator. Tap twice with 3 fingers to review the full set of touch gestures supported by Narrator. Drag a single finger around the screen to hear the item under your finger. Or, on a keyboard, press Windows plus Alt plus F1 to review the full set of Narrator commands.
Now, 2 things you may have noticed right away when it started. 1, we have new voices. This is one of them. I will demonstrate a couple of them shortly. But overall, in Windows, we're looking to add several voices. 2 US English voices, David and Zira. David is the voice you just heard. A 3rd voice that we're adding is an English UK voice, Hazel. And then when you install the other language packs, there will be a Chinese PRC, a Chinese Taiwan, French, English, Spanish, and Japanese. So out of the box, we'll have much more natural sounding voices and a wider range of options.
Navigation, voice, change the speed, pitch or volume of the current voice or choose a new voice. Button, voice speed, command not available.
So the first thing I'm going to tell you is that what I'm doing is I'm dragging my finger around the screen.
Narrator window, focus on select a different voice for Narrator, Microsoft David Desktop, editable combo box, Alt plus V, shortcut Alt plus.
I can do a 3-finger tap to ask Narrator to stop speaking. And then when you're on a control, Narrator will do a few things. One, it will look at that control and decide what it thinks the best primary action is and what the best secondary action is. So for a combo box, you can activate the primary action by double tapping.
Microsoft David Desktop, selected, 1 of 3.
And it'll tell you what's selected. It'll do the action for you. I'm going to select
Microsoft Zira Desktop, non-selected, 3 of 3. Microsoft Zira Desktop, selected, 3 of 3.
So it's telling you the important things, that here's a number of items, here's what's selected, I now have the 3rd item selected. Now that's all doing a default action. Now there's a slight shift now in the what the primary and secondary action are for a combo box, because the primary action really is to select. So I'm going to do a triple tap to close the combo box.
Microsoft Zira Desktop, selected, 0 of 0. Save changes button, Alt plus S, welcome to Narrator.
Okay, so again, this is a good example of the updated voices, so you can kind of choose a male or female voice. And then again, I told you earlier, part of what I do is I work with teams across Microsoft, and really we're trying to bring the maximum fidelity to what happens throughout the entire system. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to
Title
minimize
bar,
Narrator's first.
minimize button.
Okay.
Title bar, minimize button. Charm bar, pane, Internet Explorer tile logo.
So what I'm going to do is bring up the start screen. And as I work my way around the start
Tweet
screen,
at Rama Tweeterma, tile.png image, stock Dow plus 75.91, last trade, weather 63 degrees Seattle, WA, umbrella with raindrops tomorrow 64 degrees / 56 degrees, umbrella with raindrops Sunday 65 degrees / 58 degrees, Monday 69 degrees / 55 degrees, non-select.
so as you can see, it's important that even the tile updates occur. So as the tile updates occur, we can notify through the accessibility layer that they're there. As we move around on the screen, we're highlighting that component. The highlighting the component we think is very important because it really helps people who are have vision or who don't have vision or helping people. You can really kind of see and interact with what's going on.
Weather 63, PDC.
So I'm going to open this app. And this is an HTML5 Metro style application. And basically, we've brought the full accessibility through into these applications. Now, for those of you who did not see Guy Barker's talk earlier in the week, he has an entire talk on making accessible HTML5 applications. I really recommend you go look at that. That all really flows through to exactly all of these components. And with my finger,
Seattle.
I can go down and
Tomorrow. 64 degrees / 56 degrees.
so you can see all of these pieces become very interactable. All the text flows through. All the text can be read to you.
Charm bar, pane. Internet Explorer tile logo point scale, 100. Start menu, pane. Search apps list, search box, editable text, explorable text.
So one of the things that's kind of interesting is I always kind of wondered maybe what these emoticons may mean when you look at them, because frankly I have. Uh-oh. Accept that. Sorry about that. Apparently narrator got tired.
Narrator window, focus on, narrate, minimize button. Charm bar, pane. Internet Explorer tile logo, start menu, pane. Search box, editable text, explore, emoticons, button off. Birthday cake button. Wrapped present button. Face with tears of joy button.
So you kind of see that we really try to get as high fidelity detail as we can, all the way down to what do these emoticons mean. And that really is through working with all of these teams to help kind of integrate, continue to integrate accessibility as we go forward. So I really want to spend a little time about what Narrator is. Really, Narrator is driven solely by UI automation. I think it's important to kind of note, because if your application or your app does not directly support UI automation, Narrator will not read it. We're really focused on Windows 8 UI. If you look at trying to make the new start screen work, the charms bar as it was read, and as you look at the new Metro style HTML5 applications, we're really focused on making that a great reading experience. You've also noticed we spent quite a bit of time on touch integration and trying to make it a very smooth initial out-of-the-box experience. And that's really about industry standards. As we mentioned earlier, or as I mentioned earlier, when you look at the HTML5 work, we translate that all through to UI automation, and that ends up being very readable by Narrator. But one thing we really won't do is we're not going to go make inaccessible apps accessible. So it really is part of working with the app developers and really kind of understanding accessibility that you can hear all of that kind of flow through the system. So as I mentioned, there's quite a bit in the accessibility platform that's new, things that we've improved. And so I'm going to kind of start on the new side, because everybody likes to hear about things that are new. And really, touch integration is pretty critical. Now, one thing that you may have noticed is that when I was touching with Narrator, it never actually interacted with the application below it. Now, that's super important to notice, because for assistive technology vendors, we've created a touch redirector so that you can consume all of the touch messages, that you never end up interfering with the application below. And then, again, with Narrator, when we take those touch messages, we're doing a custom interaction model through touch, and then we're deciding what we want to do with those messages. So you can imagine doing anything you want by consuming those messages. And then you also have a third option, is once you've used the redirector and you've consumed the messages, you've looked at the touch messages, then you can decide, do you wish to re-inject, or do you want to take some other action? Now remember, I mentioned that Narrator itself was UI automation only. Really what we're doing is we're looking at the UI automation data, and we're saying, open combo box, close combo box. So we're driven, again, specifically only by UI automation. But that touch integration layer is super useful. And so we wanted to make sure that ATs could take advantage of that and kind of build their own custom models. And then I spoke a little bit about the hardware extensibility, the ability to use the hardware button volume up to launch your application, and that's done through ease of access. And then TTS engine that I touched on, we really wanted to make a much better initial voice, and you could imagine any accessible technology vendor taking and using those voices. Then what's improved? UI automation. We're continuing to improve UI automation. And in a number of ways. We have new control patterns. So if you're an application developer, you can describe more clearly a few areas. One, we've added a document space. So you want to more richly describe whether annotations are in there or whether you have a spreadsheet type application. Those are all there for you to look at. We also have added a new iText pattern 2 interface. We've also added a new live set of control patterns, and that's really come from the ARIA Live space. So we can really take the ARIA Live messaging, map that through directly to the live pattern. And we've also updated threading. The single-threaded department model works really well now. And then secondly, we've added timeouts. Timeouts are super important to the AT community. You may come across a provider that doesn't respond as quickly as you would like, so you can set that timeout and then respond accordingly to your user's needs. The magnification API is kind of the next place. And really, the piece around the magnification API is that everything that we can do for the full screen magnifier is all there and available. Everything you saw today is fully usable for you as well. And then DWM always on. First of all, DWM is a desktop window manager. Its job is to composite all of these graphics together, keep this beautiful, smooth hardware acceleration working, and as part of the system continuing to evolve, graphics drivers being stable, and the system taking advantage of all the beautiful things you can do with the graphics system today, that's going to always be on. There are two things that impact assistive technology vendors in this case. Point one is that we've migrated away from the mirror driver to a GDI accessibility driver. And so if your AT requires a mirror driver, you will have to update and migrate to the GDI accessibility driver. And that is there specifically so you can continue to leverage the great work that you've done. It'll allow the desktop window manager to always be on. And then secondly, we've also updated high contrast. High contrast really hasn't changed since the early days of 9X, and we've really taken the time to update that and make it part of a full theme. And so really the new high contrast mode will work as a theming engine does. And I think that's a great advantage to the end users because a lot of folks that would use these assistive technologies always felt like they've kind of taken a step backwards in time as the desktop window manager got turned off. And so we really believe that's a great value to the end users. And then again, ease of access extensibility. I spoke a little bit about that. The ability to register. Through being registered, you can be launched by the hardware buttons. And we've also made the transition between the desktop and the log-on desktop and the secure desktop much more transparent, easier to get data back and forth for your AT. And we don't just, we used to just kill you right away, and we updated that so you can respond much better to that. And I think ultimately you'll be able to build a much better interaction for your users. I mentioned a bit about the ability to integrate with the operating system and with the applications and how do you kind of fit in those spaces. And as you noticed in the Windows 8 UI, we have the new start screen, we have the nice full screen Metro style applications. And you can transition into the desktop and then back to these Metro style applications. And knowing that you may want to change what you're telling your users, how you want your users to interact with that system, there's notifications so you can know when those transitions happen. There's also ability to dock underneath the Metro style space. This is very important for things like on-screen keyboards. Perhaps you wish to have UI that's shown but does not ever overlap the application space. You can request from the system a certain amount of space. If the resolution is high enough, it will grant you that space and set it aside for yourself, for you to use. So I think that's a very important interaction for your users and the ability to kind of decide where you want to sit. And then there's touch keyboard interaction. In the case of the desktop, you can control whether that comes up or not. I think that's important because you might be in the middle of typing or moving through components and you might want to control how that works. And then the ability to appear on top. Again, this is only for assistive technologies, and that's really through the same mechanisms you use for signing to be an assistive technology today. The Metro style apps, I love this slide. It's the shortest slide that I have. And it really is around UI automation. Our goal around the Metro style applications is that everything you see and do and interact with is exposed through UI automation. So your call to action is really if you have an existing technology using mirror drivers, you'll have to port that to the GDI, accessibility GDI driver model. Excuse me. We want you to really take advantage of the Windows 8 extensibility points. I spoke a little bit about those today, just around being able to use custom interaction models, the custom redirector, the docking components, so you can set aside space for yourself for interaction. And then, really, we believe that all these form a great opportunity to build a very rich user experience. There's a slide with a bunch of references on there for you around the docking APIs and other components. And then, really, if you have questions or anything at this time, it's kind of a quick kind of overview to understand where we're at. I'm also happy to go back and demonstrate anything that you'd like. Much faster than I expected. So no questions? I'm sorry, one more time.
Just to be clear, that slide that you have, the last one, the second to last one?
Yeah.
It has, sorry, the one you, the
the
other
slide?
one. Keep going forward, sorry. The second to last one that you had. Next, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, so this slide, is there anything in here for how to interact directly with UI automation framework?
The SDK that's shipped with the full SDK has all of the components on how to interact with UI automation.
Right.
Is there a specific thing you have in mind?
Well, I'm interested in actually looking at the UI. I've been using UI automation to generate screen captures of stuff.
Yes.
So
UI automation isn't about screen captures. UI automation really is about describing an element on screen. So that, for example, if you say, I'm a button, it'll describe all the components that are about a button. You can invoke that button. When you look at more complex UIs, you may have something that is a button and a drop down, so you can have expand collapse, and then it can have a list item underneath it. So it really is about describing the UI in a way that is abstracted from the visuals.
maybe I should say is one of the things that we've done, and the host of things we've done with UI automation was integrate it with unit tests such that you can verify that text appears the right way in various scenarios.
Yes.
And I guess I'll just have to port through the SDK for that, but that's where I was coming from.
Okay, got it, yes. Any other questions?
When you say UI automation,
Yes.
are you referring to ARIA in the way that we're tagging semantic things in the page, or can you describe that maybe in a little bit more
Yes,
detail?
thank you. That's an excellent question. What we're doing is that when you are making HTML or HTML5 application and you use the properties and roles, we're actually under the hood translating that to UIA. So if you have a div tag that has a unique picture and it's a composite of multiple things, and you decide that that's a button, when you say ARIA role equals button for that div, we will translate that through to UI automation for you. So really we're trying to continue to advance the standards that are put forth already, and we're trying to make that very transparent to an assistive technology user. One of the things that you bring up as a good point is that really the goal of Windows around UI automation is that it does not matter what framework you're talking to, you can always interact with it through UI automation. So today, one thing that maybe wasn't clear on that slide as well, when you look at the Metro style applications, we're saying HTML, or it could be C#, the XAML apps. Those will still also all be translated through UI automation. So, great question. Thank you.
One more question on that
Sure.
same thread.
Yes.
One of the things that hasn't been clear to me in this whole the conference is that CSS3 supports selectors for ARIA ARIA button or whatever it happens to be.
Yep.
And my question is as we're doing UI automation, I see in a lot of the code samples that folks are using divs and classes and IDs still rather than section, article, aside, the new classes inside of the semantic HTML5. And so based on UI automation, how should we best be doing things? Should we be using ARIA? Should we be using the new HTML5 semantics? Kind of what's the best way to build that UI automation framework?
Excellent question. Both actually are translated through. The reason ARIA was really put there was to help the semantic markup around HTML4. You can actually interact between both HTML4 and HTML5, and those pieces are translated through to UI. Other questions? All right, thank you.